This is a quick video to help you get started on Lab 3. So I'm already running my VirtualBox. We're going to need VirtualBox for this lab because we have to run the PHP code through the web server. So if you haven't already installed VirtualBox, you can go to the course schedule page under additional resources, week 1. There's a nice PDF that tells you how to install VirtualBox on your own computer. So let's go ahead and download Lab 3. So another thing I noticed in Lab 2 I was a little bit surprised to see is a lot of students didn't quite understand how to use zip files. I saw many of you actually editing your files in the zip file. That means you would open this, letting you see the contents of the archive, but you're actually just double clicking here and starting to edit. And in that case it was very unclear what the operating system was doing. I don't know what the VirtualBox was doing in terms of where it was saving that file. So to get started, I think the best thing to do is to open up your www directory and just copy the contents in. And so now I have my lab3.php in the PDF. It's always nice to have this as a reference. So you can't just double click on this and run it like you could with HTML and our CSS examples. In order to run PHP, you have to use the web server. So in this case, you have to do it through localhost, just like our first lab, and you'd have to type in the name of the file. Now in this case, the web server has executed the program, and the output of that program is what you're seeing here. But if you just tried to double click on it, in fact, from the VirtualBox, it doesn't even know what this file is. You can see it doesn't look like this HTML with a little Mozilla icon here. So you can't double click. So through localhost, this is allowing you to run PHP. Now there is another way to run PHP as well. You can go to Applications, you can click Terminal. This opens up a Unix terminal. You can cd to www, and in this directory, if you type ls, it lists the directory, and you can invoke the command line PHP interpreter, and you can give it a file name. Now, what just happened here was PHP ran, and it outputted the output of your program. This is the same thing that was served through the web server. So if I was to view the source of this source is exactly the same as what came off in this terminal. Now, the browser's helping put some of these colors in here to make it look nice. The terminal won't do that. But at least you can see it's valid HTML text. So when you edit PHP, so I'm going to open this up with Atom. Now I can scroll down, and the HTML code's done for you, but every so often you're going to see this that says put your task 1 here. And this is where you're going to type in your PHP code. Now one thing I did add is this error command. This is in your notes. It doesn't really always work so well. There are certain errors that PHP will be displayed in HTML if you have this code, but most serious errors it won't display, and I'm going to get to that just in a second. So right now this is already provided for you, so you don't have to touch it. But you would come down here to your first task, and what I'm going to do is just a simple print hello world example. So hello world. Okay, I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to go back to localhost. This is view source, so I'm just going to run it again here. Localhost lab3 PHP. I've modified it. When I hit enter, it reruns it, and it says hello world. Now if you modify your file, every time you want to see it, you have to reload the PHP file. So you can either click enter, or you can also hit refresh. Likewise, if I was on the command line here, and I typed in PHP, and I typed in lab3 PHP, it also runs the new edited version, and you can see the word hello world shows up here. Now the command line serves one more purpose that's really useful. Let's say that you made a mistake. So I'm going to type in some invalid code. So I don't know what's invalid. I say equals, I don't know, maybe do something like this. That's not valid. I didn't close it. I have an equal sign. Nothing's assigned. You can't use an assignment operator to a quote. So this is going to cause problems. Now if I was to run it here, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit refresh. Look what happens. Wow, it just completely disappears. If you try to view source, there's no HTML code there at all. That's because your PHP program has a very serious error, and then the web server decided not to serve any of the contents from the output of the PHP program because it had an error. But from the command line, so I'm going back to my terminal here, if I type that in, lab3.php, oh, I can see the error. There's a syntax error. There's something wrong with the syntax. It doesn't flow or doesn't follow the standards that you're supposed to in PHP. And it even tells me what line it's on. So I can come back up here and I can see, oh yeah, there's a problem with this line. Now keep in mind, sometimes it doesn't tell you exactly where the error is. So it may say, oh, it's on line 56, or sometimes it can't figure out that you're having an error until it gets later into the HTML page. But at least you know that there's an error and you know roughly where to look. So in this case, I fix it. I just saved it. And now if I go back to the terminal and I rerun it, so I just typed in PHP lab3 PHP and I run again, you can see the HTML code comes out. So one advice I give you, and what I do personally, is I edit the PHP code here in the editor. I check it with the terminal. So I just keep coming back to the terminal, typing PHP. Every time I make a change, I type it, see if it looks okay, there's no errors. And once I've made some significant changes and now I want to view it in the browser, and I've confirmed on the command line that everything's fine, then I'll load it back up in the browser. There's one more thing I want to show you. If you really don't want to install VirtualBox, or you're having some trouble installing VirtualBox, or you just want to play around without having the hassle of VirtualBox, there's this very nice thing called a PHP sandbox. And it's linked in here and it's on our webpage as well under the additional resources. The PHP sandbox, you can run it. So it's a website that allows you to edit PHP code directly into a text box here. And then you can execute that code and see the output. So let me just give you an example. I'm going to actually cut and paste our entire lab 3 into that. So I deleted everything that was there. I go to lab 3. I have to select everything. I copy it. I paste it. Now I can actually execute it here and I can see the output. Now it's not web browser output, but it is the HTML code that would be printed out. So it's just like running it from the command line. Now the problem is, if you really want to view this, it's kind of a pain, because what you have to do now is you should take this, copy it, paste it into another file here. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to save it as, let's put an HTML or www directory. We'll call it output.html. And now I can view that. And that's almost like running it through the web server. Now, it doesn't like this little command that I set, but you can just ignore this, because when you do the lab verification, you will have to run it through the web server, so in the www directory. This lab's not very difficult, so I highly encourage you to get started soon. Read the lab very thoroughly. There's lots of instructions to help guide you through it, and there's even some very nice links to examples in this sandbox of how to use if statements. Okay, good luck.